Bueno, hoy tenemos el seminario 106 de 110. Y miren, de parte de René hubo una confusión ahí en cuanto a la información. Ella no sabía que eran las mismas personas. Por eso la vez pasada fue muy similar. Pero ya hablamos con ella, se disculpa y René, bueno, trae nueva información que creo que les va a ser de muchísima utilidad y va a ser en adición a lo que estamos viendo nosotros, como es la visa E2, E1 y TN. René, welcome. You can start, René. I will be here.
Okay. Buenos dias a todos. Francisco, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Hey.
Go ahead.
All right. Good morning, everybody. So, as Francisco said, I was a little confused that I was speaking to the same group. So I promise you today, the information muy diferente. Okay. So today, guys, we're going to be talking about several different things. The first thing we're going to talk about today is people that have had difficulty coming to the United States because of previous immigration violations. Maybe years ago they had an illegal entry and then they left the United States after that illegal entry, and they became subject to a 3 or a 10-year bar for reentry into the United States, for example. This is probably the most common problem that people have with immigration is they spent a period of time in the United States, more than 180 days roughly, and what ended up happening is they triggered a bar to re-enter the United States. So people, feel that, okay, I've got this bar and I can't go back and it limits my options and they get discouraged, right? So the other most common one is people that have been deported from the United States, either by an immigration judge or by a Border Patrol agent at the border at their attempt to entry. And because, all law is complicated, but U.S. immigration law is one of the most complicated and areas of law that, it takes, in addition to law school here in the United States, another 2 to 3 years just to get the basics down. So if it takes a lawyer that long, right, if you don't go to law school in the United States, this can be very confusing to people. Okay, now there are certain waivers or in the community of perdón that certain people will be able to ask the United States to waive their problem or forgive them for their previous immigration violations. Okay, so waivers may be granted in just a variety of situations. So there's a lot of waivers available to a foreign national that can demonstrate that has a U.S. citizen or legal permanent resident spouse or parent. And then if they can show that spouse or parent is going to suffer extreme hardship if the foreign national is not allowed to get a green card and enter the United States. Now, it doesn't always have to be a green card. And that's the great thing about these waivers. A person may not be seeking to come here permanently. Maybe they just want to come here temporarily, maybe on a business visitor's visa or even a regular tourist visa. There are waivers that can be used to fix problems. For example, that 3 or the 10-year bar, you may not have to remain outside the United States that long if you have a U.S. citizen or legal permanent resident, spouse, or parent, whether you want to immigrate permanently or you want to just come temporarily to work. Okay. Now, there are some rare instances such as the case if a person has a criminal history that makes them inadmissible to the United States, where they've committed a crime. Usually, this is a fairly minor crime, but that they can use the hardship to a U.S. citizen or legal permanent resident child. Now, the circumstances to this are rare. Don't get me wrong, but just know that they're out there. Okay. Now, so what if you have this immigration violation, but you don't have U.S. citizen or legal permanent resident family to qualify you for these waivers. Well, some waivers are available just on the passage of time. Some waivers are available just for 15 or more years of time being available. So again, this is for minor things. It's not for big things, right? Also, there's if you've been ordered deported by an immigration judge, or you get an expedited order of removal at the border. The expedited removal at the border used to be much more difficult to get forgiveness for, but recent policy changes to the I-212 have made it much easier for people to get forgiveness, basically for their deportation order. And this will allow them to fix the deportation order. And then once they've done that, then they can usually, sometimes they'll still need another type of waiver, but for people with the deportation order, just because they got caught trying to come in, or they got picked up by immigration here in the United States because they were in the wrong place at the wrong time, this type of forgiveness, the I-212, is the type of forgiveness that's pretty easy to get as long as you are a person of good moral character. And, this is really the only thing that you've done bad is, this one little immigration thing. Now, the thing about these, right, is that they're difficult to prepare. They take a lot of time, and they take a certain level of expertise. So while there are some immigration applications and forms that a person can figure out how to do on their own, this is definitely not one of them, because this takes very specialized and very specific knowledge. Okay, so just know that is out there. If you are, if you are sitting here today thinking I've got this problem and I'll never be able to fix it, that's not true. Or, if you have chosen to take this class because you may want to get into doing immigration for people, that there's options out there. Okay. So the next thing we're going to talk about is extending and changing status. So most employment work visas are non-immigrant visas that limit the amount of time you can remain in the United States. They have, visas are entered. So visas are issued initially for a period of time, anywhere from 1 to up to 4 or 5 years at a time, and some of them can be renewed or extended, and some of them cannot. And then there's a couple of visas that you can renew indefinitely. So if you are an investor and you are coming on an E2, you can renew that forever as long as you continue to meet the requirements of that visa. The TN visa, while you can technically renew that forever, it's only going to get renewed or extended a few times. Now, for people that come in other categories, maybe they come in on an L visa because they get transferred from their company to the United States. This is an example that it's issued initially in either 1 or 3 year increments initially. And then at the end of that period of time, you can renew it in 2 year immigrants, but you can only be here on an L1 visa for a maximum period of 7 years. So at the end of that 7 years, when that's approaching, you've got to make the decision on whether you're going to extend your stay, or whether you're going to change your stay. Now, there is extending and changing status in the United States. Sometimes the best option is to do it inside the United States, because there's a risk if you renew or extend your visa outside the United States by attending a counselor interview. And that is if your visa's getting ready to get expired, and then if you get denied at the counselor interview, then you have to start all over with something new, and you're stuck kind of there. You'll be stuck there in Mexico, and you may not have the proper documentation to even get back and pack up your belongings and house and things like that. So that's important to understand. Now, the challenge that comes with extending inside the United States is that it's much more difficult to do in the United States, because USCIS has a higher threshold of requirements, right? It's a little bit easier, if you will, to renew a visa stamp outside the United States. But if you can't take that risk, know that it's going to be much more difficult. And you're going to need more evidence and a lot more documentation to prove that you were doing what you said you were doing. Okay, so once someone has maxed out their period in a visa category, okay, they may want to, change their status. And I just messed up my whole presentation, sorry. Okay, so changing status would be, maybe they entered the United States on a student visa originally, maybe an F1 student visa, but then they get a job offer, right? So if they can find an employer to file for them under one of the work categories, right? They don't have to leave the United States. They just change from one status to the other. So this, this is also a viable way to stay in the United States. If you've maxed out your visa stay, is you can just change to another visa category through an employer, or you can change employers that will change your non-immigrant category, and you'll be allowed to stay. Okay, now let's talk. We're going to talk about the most common ways that someone can come to the United States, either temporarily or permanently. Now, the most common way always continues to be getting a green card through family. So that's a whole, maybe that's in the next session that we talk about that in great detail, right? But, that's, if you don't have a family member, you can come. Now, the most common non-immigrant work visas, if you are a Mexican national, are usually a TN visa, which is the NAFTA visa. Okay, so that, if you have a minimum of a bachelor's degree, a certain number of years experience, and you fall into one of about 30 to 40 different professions, then you can come temporarily on a TN visa. TN visas are issued for up to 1 to 3 years. TN visas usually are very easy to renew or extend your stay, because you just basically would fly home, go make your you make your appointment, fly home, go to a U.S. embassy. Now, they've been a little bit more difficult to renew through the Trump administration, and especially this year because the embassy's being closed. So what we are seeing, so people have been forced to extend their TN visa in the United States, and then they learned that they need a lot more documentation. Another very, very common one is the L1 manager executive transferee visa, and it's very common from Mexico just due to our close proximity, right? So this is where where an organization has a company in Mexico and a company in the United States. And it can be any country, not just Mexico, but we're going to say Mexico because you guys are in Mexico. So in this case, an organization that owns a company in both Mexico and the United States can transfer their managers and high-level executives to come and manage and direct their U.S. operations. So this is a very, this visa is, I don't want to say that it's difficult to get, because it's not. It's just that a lot of the times there's a lot of work to be done on the company documents, right, to make this happen. So if everything, once the paperwork is all straight with the organization, for someone that meets the basic requirements, this isn't easy. This is a fairly easy, although paperwork intensive visa. Okay. Now, if you want to come permanently and you don't have a family member, okay, I'm going to give you an overview of two types of employment-based green cards where an employer can file for you to come. And we're going to talk about the two most common categories. So the first category we're talking about is the employment-based green card category 2. So this is available to foreign citizens who hold an advanced degree, which means it has to be a master's degree or higher from an equivalent foreign institution. Okay, that's the first option. If you don't have a master's degree, right, but you have a bachelor's degree and you have 5 years of relevant work experience, you can also qualify for the EB2. So in a lot of instances, right, maybe, someone doesn't continue on to master's degree, but they have a bachelor's degree and work experience, right? So those are the first two categories. This green card can be given to foreign professionals that can prove that they have exceptional abilities in their field, And so if they can submit evidence of 10 years of work experience, a degree that correlates or, relates to their field, that they have a substantial salary that shows their exceptional ability. So, if you make, if you make $15 an hour, that's not a high salary, but if you make $150,000 to $200,000 a year, right, that's a substantial salary, right? And then membership and recognition by widely known immigrations related to your field. So those are the basics for that green card. In addition, you've got to actually have a U.S. employer that has a job offer for you, and then you have to go through a lengthy process called labor certification for this. So the labor certification is designed to show the U.S. government that there were no available U.S. workers that wanted or could do this job. Okay, so this is the more difficult green card of the two we're going to talk about. The one that has more broad characteristics, that's a little bit easier to obtain, is people that are coming in the EB3 category. But because these are easier to obtain, they take longer to obtain. They can take anywhere from the normal roughly 1.5 to 2 years that it takes to get them approved to it may be though 9, 10, 12 years before a green card is available to a person in some of these categories, not so much the first two, but especially the third category. So an EB3 category has 3 categories: workers, professionals, and unskilled workers. So you can see just by those titles, right, that you don't necessarily have to be a rocket scientist, right? You don't have to have a bunch of degrees and be nationally acclaimed to come to the United States through an employment-based green card. Okay, so the first category under this is workers. So you must be able to demonstrate that you possess at least 2 years of the required job experience, educational training, and that you can also use, any relevant post-secondary education can be considered as training. So now I don't know that there's a lower level degree like we have here in the United States and Mexico, because I've never seen one that is the same as like our associate's degree, which is a 2-year degree, but that could be an example of post-secondary education, having 2 years of college coursework, right, relevant to the job you are going to have here in the United States. Now, professionals, okay, to come in the professional category, this requires at least a bachelorette degree or a licenciatura degree. And of course, it has to be related to the work that you want to do here in the United States. And then we have the unskilled workers who don't have to have anything, right? These can be entry-level positions that require less than 2 years training or experience. And of course, this work is not going to be temporary or seasonal in nature because this is a green card, right? This is, you are desiring to permanently come to the United States. Okay, so, and again, any green card in this category requires you to go through the labor certification process to prove to the United States that there were no qualified workers in the US to do these jobs. Okay, so that is, one of this is a very common way to come. And some people, can wait a long time to have somebody. They can wait a long time to have somebody to come fill a position. A lot of the green cards for employment in this category are, more just options to help fellow countrymen, right? It's more common that somebody that's immigrated to the United States and is open to business is going to file for a green card for somebody in this category than it is that you're just going to randomly find a job on a job board and apply, and they'll file a green card for you because of the length of time it comes. And so while USCIS is aware of this, right, that they're going to look at, well, you're willing to wait 5 years for somebody to come. They do know that there is probably a special relationship there, or that, it is somebody that immigrated to the United States and wishes to assist their fellow countrymen to immigrate to the United States. So USCIS knows this, but these applications, though, have to demonstrate clearly that there is actually a real job waiting there for them in the United States. Other than that, right, you know, they're not overly difficult to get. The hardest part of this, a lot of the time, of this particular green card category is the labor certification, because you're getting into categories that don't require advanced degrees, right? It's a little bit harder to prove to the U.S. government in this category that there was no U.S. workers available. But the good news is you guys are in good hands with Francisco, because he's experienced in these types of green cards and these type of challenges with labor certifications, the challenges that are present. I know, you know, this year, I think, you know, we've worked on 5 or 6 extensions in the US, and we worked together on them because they were just so, you know, normally this is something Francisco does on his own, but it's just the extensions were much harder. So guys, you're in the right place. You've been with Francisco and his team now for several weeks. I think you don't need me to tell you that you're in the right place. I think you know that. So as always, guys, thank you for your attention. And I hope to see you guys in the, you know, at some point in the future, working with you through ABC Global. And I'm so glad to have been part of your journey this far. So,
René, muchísimas gracias. Thank you a lot, René. Really, you are one of my best teachers that I have.
oh, thank you.
Really, really. Y déjenme les platico que su visita de René a México fue para que nos enseñara a sacar las EB2, la EB3, la EB5. Esas vino una